Hey everybody, we're here. Just want to talk to you guys for a few minutes about raising teenagers. I think it's a big topic on all of our minds. If you are watching this video, I'm sure you were captivated by the title, and I know that it's something that's very near to our hearts. We've been involved, obviously, raising teenagers now for seems like forever. We're almost done. Well, I guess you're never done. But anyway, we want to share a few thoughts with you guys about some things that we've learned along the way that hopefully will help you as you navigate the waters as a parent of teenagers. There are three things I think that are important for us to understand about adolescents or about teenagers. And that is really what the objective and what's going on with them and how we can really lean into that and help them and guide them in their journey, hopefully towards God. And those three things are simply this: belonging. Every kid's looking for belonging. They need a place to where they can, where they feel like they fit in. That's a question they ask themselves. It's why peer pressure is such a big deal in high schools, because they're trying to find a place to fit in. Belonging is incredibly important. Number two is identity. And they're asking the question, who am I? And so because of that question of who am I, certainly they're going to push limits. They're wanting to see, well, are my decisions really my own? And the third thing, very similar to that, is autonomy, and really this sense of being able to make decisions on their own for themselves, and,
Right.
and there's a separation that occurs, as they grow into adulthood. I mean, the goal is to leave your house and to start their own life and their own family, and certainly we all want that. But there are many times, perhaps, as they make that transition, that we're uncomfortable with giving them that space. And so those are the three main tasks that kids have as they're growing through the teen years. Now, there's an interesting article in Psychology Today from 2017, and it was talking about the problem of anxiety today. And as we read this article, it was really fascinating, because every single one of the things that they pointed out that are challenges to kids today are linked back to one of those three things: belonging, identity, or autonomy. We'll share with you just sort of the bullet points of the article, and you can hit me up later if you'd like the link to where to find it. But here are some of the things they said. They said that the reason why teens have so much anxiety today, number one, was because electronics offer an unhealthy escape. And we all can relate to the fact that kids are totally into electronics, many at least. And what that fills is a need for connection in an unhealthy way.
Yeah, the next one is happiness is all the rage. Just want to be happy. And that connects with their identity. Who am I? And wanting to be happy in everything that they do.
Parents are giving unrealistic praise, and when you're praising a kid unrealistically, telling them they're awesome at something that they're not, it messes with their identity, but that also causes anxiety. And so again, this article was addressing anxiety specifically, but certainly it's connected to identity.
Parents are getting caught up in the rat race. Really, just parents being, personal assistants to their teenagers, wanting them to be involved and do everything. And in a sense, it's, I think, a problem with the parent's own identity, but that feeds into the identity of the kids.
Kids aren't learning emotional skills, number 5. And I think the point of that is simply that, we got to let them fail. They have to fail. They have to stub their toe. They have to learn how to wrestle through these things. And that's part of developing autonomy. But when that doesn't happen, it creates anxiety.
The sixth one is parents view themselves as protectors rather than guides, which again affects their autonomy. Somewhere along the line, parents begin to believe that their role is to help their kids grow up with as few emotional and physical scars as possible. And again, kind of referring to what Dave was talking about before, then they're not learning on their own.
Number 8, parents are parenting out of guilt and fear. Parenting stirs up uncomfortable emotions, and like guilt and fear, I should say. But rather than let themselves feel those emotions, many parents are just simply changing their parenting habits. It's very hard to stay the course when your own emotions get involved with your kids. But what that does is it undermines autonomy.
I think you skipped 7. Adults don't know how to help kids face their fears in the right way.
There you go.
Which also affects their autonomy and their identity.
Nice cover.
No problem.
Number 9. I think it is number 9. We're number 9, right?
We're
Okay, number 9. Kids aren't being given enough free time to play, and this affects their identity and their autonomy, actually.
And then lastly, family hierarchies are out of whack. which again affects their connection or their belonging and their identity.
So we point those things out simply to say that even in sort of academic literature right now out there about, about psychological needs of teenagers and why there seems to be this epidemic of anxiety, they're hitting on factors that all are linked to these three basic core needs for belonging, identity, and autonomy. Right. And so as we raise our teens, we want to make sure that we are aware of those three needs and that we're doing everything we can to meet those three needs in our children as we help them develop into mature adults. So we want to spend a few minutes just kind of breaking this down, and obviously this topic deserves much, much more than we can give you in a few moments here on a video. But the first one, let's just unpack for a minute. Some keys to building autonomy. There are several things, I think, many things we could say about that. But one of the things I believe is encouragement and belief. Encouraging our children, believing in them. A few scriptures for you. Ephesians 4, verse 29 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Proverbs 17:22 says, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." And Proverbs 18, verse 14 says, "The human spirit can endure in sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear?" And all of these verses seem to speak to this idea that we need encouragement. We all do. Even as adults, we need this. But particularly as children, when they are trying to find and build their sense of self and their autonomy of being able to make good decisions, there is an aspect of that needs your encouragement and your belief in them. And I think about this, and I just think about our own kids and some of the examples over the years of ways that we've tried to always be encouraging to our children. And I think about even just many of you guys know, if you're if you're watching this and you're in the Austin church, two of our kids have sang in the worship team, and both of those two young ladies needed a lot of encouragement to even consider getting out onto the stage. I saw this in them, like, hey, you can sing, you should try this, you should give it a shot. I think the first time I had to drive them to the church building myself and almost drag them, not quite, but almost. But it's been really fascinating to watch them blossom and bloom in that particular role, using that particular talent that they had. It took a lot of encouragement. It's just one thing. There's many, many other things, but it's one area in one way in which, as I think back and look back on our parenting, just one way in which encouragement is so incredibly important.
I think encouraging character just as much as results, obviously, if not more than results, really. It's their effort in whatever they're going after. It's not so much you won the game, but that you played your best or you did your best in school or whatever they're doing. It's their character and their effort is really important to praise that so much more than the results, because we don't want our kids to think that their worth comes from what they do, but really who they are and who God has created them to be, and encouraging those God-given characteristics that they already have.
And you may ask the question, well, why, what does encouragement have to do with autonomy? Isn't autonomy kind of being your own person? Why is that important? Right. But I think that establishing an atmosphere of encouragement gives our children the confidence then to be able to make decisions and to develop that autonomy in time. If there's not encouragement, then the opposite of that is basically insecurity. And encouragement develops security. Again, encouragement about the right things.
Right.
There's a quote that says, "Live with encouragement, learn with confidence," and I like that, because if we live with encouragement, then we have the confidence to learn and to grow and to grow into the things that God perhaps has called us to. Hebrews 3:13 says, "But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness."
Yeah, just that we need to be, again, generous with encouragement, encouraging one another daily. Obviously, this is in the context of being disciples, but our kids need that same encouragement. And I thought this was a good question. I think we can ask ourselves, what is some kind of encouragement that you received when you were a kid or a teenager? I'm sure we all have at least that one teacher, that one parent, that one person that just said something to you when you were that age that really, really encouraged you. And think about why that encouraged you so much and how you can do the same thing for your kid. And then think of the opposite, something that maybe really discouraged you at that age, and being careful not to say those kinds of things to our kids. We know what encourages us, and it's really the same for our kids. We want belonging as much as they do. And so I think we just need to translate that into doing the same things with our children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, you got to remember, being a teenager, you're racked with all kinds of changes, hormonal and everything else, right? And maybe some of us are a little too old to remember that. I kind of doubt it. I think we all kind of remember that. And it's important to remember that their brains are still developing, which means their sense of judgment,
not too great,
and decision making is still developing. And so it's easy to forget that, but it's important for us to know that, so we can so that we're gracious, obviously, with our kids. And I think that as they're developing their autonomy, we shouldn't be offended when they maybe make decisions at times that aren't what we want them to make. Sure. I'm not saying don't lean in and don't challenge those decisions. I'm just saying that we have to understand that they're pushing their limits and trying to figure out where their individuality begins. And
sometimes this translates into pulling away from you and your relationship. At least it did with our girls. And I don't have boys, so I don't know how it is. But all three of them, especially two of them, went through a time where they, especially as probably preteens and young teens, and some of you moms who are dealing with this understand, they start pulling away. The girls would, if they had a choice to ride with me or Dave, they always chose Dave. If they were going to talk to somebody about something, they always chose Dad.
Oh, yeah.
And for a while,
Dad
I was
the best.
really hurt because all of a sudden these girls who used to be little, who used to think I hung the moon and were my best friends and love you, mommy, and all that kind of stuff, suddenly didn't want anything to do with me. And it was really hard. And then I realized, Dave took a class that talked about this, as little girls, they identify with mom, and as they get older, they're starting to look to adulthood, and they identify dad with adulthood, so they start pulling away from mom. It's not personal, it's just part of their development. And not all girls do this, not all kids pull away from their parents. My girls did emotionally for a few years, and I just had to stay in there and love them and not take offense and just be grateful that at least they were talking to somebody. But it was hard as they were pulling away, and again, they were searching for their identity, their autonomy. Who am I outside of mom? I'm my own person. And that can be difficult to go through sometimes as parents, but hang in there.
Yeah. The real battle, honestly, with kids is their autonomy and your control.
Yes.
As a parent, you're very much in control when that kid is 3, 4, 5, 6. At least you'd like to think that you are. Sure. And but really, I mean, when our kids were that little, they were young, I could muscle them, so to speak, in quotations, muscle them into doing the right things. Like, no, you're going to do it. Otherwise, no this, no that. We learned how to get them to behave. But as they get older, they develop their own will. And that same, if we as parents carry that same mentality, then we hurt their ability to develop that autonomy. And so it's not that you go willy-nilly and just let them go and do whatever they want. There's a gradual process. They are still learning, but you have to understand that you are loosening the reins. You're giving them more ability to make decisions within particular guidelines, but yet, and so they're learning, kind of like you would driving a car. You just don't give them the keys and say, go figure it out. I mean, you start out real slow in the parking lot. Let's see if we can drive around the parking lot without hitting a curb. Okay, now let's try the neighborhood when everybody's asleep and there's no cars on the road. Okay, now in that sort of thing. So you do it, but you're giving them more and more autonomy. They do still need direction, and they do still need guidance, for sure. But I think communicating this and being a spirit of encouragement and belief in them, everybody needs to be believed in, and your kids are no different. They need to be believed in, and that belief and that encouragement needs to be sincere. I think a second thing, when you think about developing autonomy, is just having quality time with our kids. Obviously, scriptures talk a lot about this. If you've attended any of our youth ministry nights, you've heard the scripture from Deuteronomy 6, verses 1 through 4 read, probably so many times that you have it memorized. But it's all about passing on faith and spending time, talking about God when it says when you're lying down, when you're getting up, when you're on the road, all these things. But taking the time, and so it's not just time, but it's also quality and having a quality of conversation.
Yeah, what are some of the activities you enjoy with our kids? I think with COVID, I feel like we have more time at home, and maybe we're busier because we're having to work from home. But I think what we found too is we're all busy in our own rooms doing our own Zoom calls. And so we're in the same house, but we're not actually spending time together. Like, we're not spending time with Kalia. She's in her room doing school. We're doing things, then she's got things in the afternoon. We might have things. And we've just tried really hard to make sure that we had some time, some quality time with her, with just the three of us, because it's so easy to feel like, well, I'm around them all the time, but not actually engaging and having conversation and really spending some time together that isn't just, separate in our own rooms. I think we've got to be careful, especially with, COVID and the life the way it is right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another way of developing autonomy is to have expectations. Hebrews 12 verse 11 says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." Right. Proverbs 29:21 says, "A servant pampered from youth will turn out to be insolent." And that one's pretty direct, right? And there's actually a thing now called extended adolescence. When I was growing up, my generation, I remember very, very often my parents telling me, "Hey, when you're 18, you are on your own." And so I kind of grew up with this mentality that, well, you know what, I'm going to get up and grow up, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to support myself. And by the time I was 18, I was pretty much supporting myself. I got a little bit of help for college, but that was about it. And that was I'm sure many of you, if you're my age, probably grew up with sort of the same kind of thing. Well, there's this thing called extended adolescence now where, we're basically, and some of this may be circumstantial, due to economics and things of that nature, but we have kids that are living at home into their mid-late 20s. And so sociologists now call that extended adolescence. In other words, they're saying that if in the past kids kind of matured into adulthood, by their late teens, now it's taking until they're almost 30, which is crazy to me. And I think part of that is on us as parents,
right? Because
of our own expectations and what we expect of our children. I'm not talking just about getting a job and getting out of the house. I'm talking
lack of expectations.
But it's a lack of expectations that you're going to take responsibility,
right,
for yourself, and expecting them to work hard. I learned this lesson early on because, you guys all remember science projects. And I remember when Stasia, my oldest, was young and she got her first science, she's my oldest kid, first science project. I was excited. It was my project, not hers. So we did this whole thing.
Clothes on fire.
It was called Clothes on Fire. We burned different types of things, materials. And she actually made the science. We went downtown. She had to go to the downtown science fair, for all the districts and all this kind of stuff. And I think she got a ribbon, and we got a ribbon or whatever. Next year, science fair came along again, and this time, she and I built a trebuchet, and we did this whole thing, and it was so much fun. We built, all this stuff. And so by the third year, I was a little busier. I think I'd started school or something, and so she's like, "Hey, Dad, what are we doing for science fair this year?" And I'm like, "What do you mean we? This is your project." And I realized in that moment that I had basically crippled her because I had done it for her. Yeah. And of course that whole project was a disaster because it was like every day it's like, "Hey, Dad, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this?" And she hadn't learned. And it's a silly example, and we were able to overcome that. And she's a mature adult now, but I think that mentality of not doing things for them, but having expectations,
right,
and then letting them fail. I think that's
succeed,
fail and succeed, right? Well, you did it. That her first project, I think she did after I didn't help her, was pretty bad. Like, the poster wasn't very good, and she passed. She did fine, but it was not as good as what I would have done, right?
Of course.
But I think that's kind of the thing, right? We have to give them that space because even at that age, they're developing ever step by step the autonomy of taking responsibility for themselves and for their actions. So
we're a little too quick, I think, especially as moms, to come in and rescue our kids. If they have a project that, they've procrastinated on and didn't do it, and we're up till 2:00 in the morning helping them do their project instead of just letting them fail. I've been guilty of that, where they forgot their lunch 5 days in a row and we're running up to the school. One of my kids was guilty of that a lot. And finally I was like, you know what? I'm sorry, I'm busy, which was the truth. I can't bring it to you. And the next day they remember their lunch because they didn't want to go hungry. I just did it one time, but I could see how I was enabling and not helping them become independent by just continuing to rescue them from some of this. Most of it was benign, nothing serious, but if we had continued that way, it could have gotten to the point where it was something serious and, I couldn't rescue them from it. So.
Mm-hmm. So there's a few things about developing autonomy. We spent a lot of time on that one. Some of these things overlap a little bit with identity and belonging. So we'll take just a brief moment to kind of hit those other two here as we wrap up. But identity. So how do we help kids, how do we help our children develop their identity? Well, obviously this is where, we've got to lean in and understand that, that we want to teach the heart, right? As, the heart of God. And this is where, Scripture comes in and where, our own lives and our own examples come in as we're teaching, our children, what it means and modeling what it means to follow Jesus. Matthew 5 verse 8 says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." And it really comes down to the purity of heart. And so there's this transition that has to happen in the teen years from conversation about rules to conversation about whys. Rules are important, certainly, and I think that that's another lesson. But laying the tracks early on in life for our children so that they understand right and wrong is very important. But then if you've done that well, the second half of that as they develop into teens is now you've got to go back and really hammer down and help them understand the whys. I mean, they do want to please you, but they also want it to be their own.
Right.
And, I think this is the funny thing. I mean, so many of our kids, our children, some of the other kids in the church who have studied the Bible, I mean, oftentimes they want to do it on the down low, right? They don't even want their parents to know about it. And
That they're studying the Bible?
That they're studying the Bible, I mean. And part of that is because they want their faith to be their own. They fully understand that their parents want them to become Christians. And we were very aware of this. Obviously, being in ministry, it's like double whammy, right? Our kids, not only do they feel that pressure in a sense because of, because we believe in Jesus and we're disciples, but secondly, we're actually the ministers of the church. So, so we were super sensitive, maybe even to a fault. I don't think so, but we would kind of say way back a little bit on leaning in on that because we want them to develop their own convictions. And we would lean in. And my philosophy was always lean in, poke, and then lean back out if the time wasn't right, because I want to make sure that I wanted to have those conversations with them on their terms. It gives them the respect of their own autonomy and identity when you do that. And I think sometimes as parents we can lean in too hard, we press too hard, and the kids will capitulate because they love you and they want to please you. But
or they will outright rebel.
And so, but either one of those is not a good outcome. And so we want to be able to develop those conversations, but allow them to kind of set the terms of those conversations. So what I would do is we'd be driving along, and I would always look for opportunities, things that big events. Maybe it's something big happened in the world around us. Maybe there's an earthquake somewhere or something tragic that, hey, wow, what'd you think about that? What do you think about God? Or maybe somebody got baptized. Someone that a close family friend got baptized, and hey, so what did you think about that? And I would ask questions, and and sometimes our kids, and invariably sometimes I'd get one word answer like, good, okay. That kind of thing, and if that was the answer, then I didn't press.
End the conversation.
That was the end of the conversation. It's like, this is not the time. Other times, they would speak a little more, and so when they open the door, I would go in, and we worked that way with each of the kids and tried to help them and bring them along and teach the heart, but do it in a begin to kind of do it a little bit on their terms, if that makes sense. We didn't back away and not have those conversations, but we allowed those conversations to happen a little bit more on their terms. And so I think so identity is really important. I think secondly, just never give up on them. They are developing their identity. They're trying to figure it out. Don't give up. Of course, Matthew 18 talks about, in verse 12 talks about, the man owns 100 sheep and one wanders away. He leaves 99 and he goes to find the one. I mean, that's the heart of God. And I know that's the heart of all of us as parents. We want our children to thrive and to grow to know and love God. And we're going to be disappointed at times in the things decisions they make and the things they do, but we can never, ever lose hope.
Right.
And they are listening. They are paying attention. They're paying attention to our lives. They're paying attention not only to what you say, but what you do. And if those two things, and whether or not those two things match, because they themselves are trying to figure out their own identity.
But just continuing to pray for them, continuing to reach out to them in any way that we can. having other people in their lives too. I don't think we've said that, but just having other families and other people in their lives that they can talk to, because sometimes they don't feel like they can talk to us for whatever reason. Even if we've paved the way and we've made it clear that we won't judge them, sometimes they just have a hard time. So making sure that they have other adults in their lives, that they have relationships with, that they feel like they can talk to, and they have other people who believe in them. But I think that belief and that continued belief, no matter what decisions they make, is so, so important. I know a lot of families, whose maybe kids did not become disciples as teens. Of course, that's not what we want for our kids, but they've continued to have a great relationship with their kids, and then later on down the road they became disciples. So maintaining that relationship and that belief is so important, no matter what our kids decide to do.
Yeah, as they're developing identity, having other adult relationships outside of the family are that's very important, actually, and because then it does give them an outlet to talk, and in times when perhaps they're not quite comfortable yet talking to their parents about what their faith and their struggles. And that's simply not because it says nothing bad about you necessarily, but what it does mean is simply they're trying to find their own way on their own terms. And that's just part of identity. That's part of that struggle of the teenage years. The last thing, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and just a shout out to Carol Glinsky, Kelly Fleckenstein, and Audrey Vivar, and all of those who've been involved in my kids' life. Leslie, we've lots of people to thank, honestly, but I think some of them know more stuff in some areas of my kids' life than I do, and I'm okay with that, because they were able to help them in their faith in times when I wasn't. And so I just wanted to shout out to them and say thank you, and encourage you. It really does work having other people involved in your kids' lives. It is a lifesaver.
Amen. The last thing is we talked about was belonging, and we'll just touch on this for a moment. But our children as teenagers are looking to belong, and I think that when we think about this issue, certainly if you've got children that are coming into teenage years, get ready to drive. Get ready to be mobile, and it's going to mean sacrifice on your part. If you want your children to have a sense of belonging with the right kinds of people, you have to be willing to commit to getting them in a place where they can. If we leave it up to chance, they're just going to develop their own, relationships, perhaps at school or wherever, and those may or may not be good relationships. But I think that as parents, as disciples, we want to make sure that we are getting our kids in a place where they can be connected with, other people of faith. And so that means being devoted to getting your kids places. I mean, I think when we come in, your first kid into the teen ministry, it's a shock because, some of us have a hard time getting our own selves to everything. That's another sermon for another time. But when we get to teens, now we have to make sure that, our kid is getting to places and getting to things on time. And that is a sacrifice. It is a sacrifice. We spend a lot of time driving. I mean, I used to hate Saturday nights because, teens were meeting on Saturday nights. And, we would have to drive kids to drop them off. And then by the time I got home, I'd sit down for about, 45 minutes. And then I'd get in the car and go back and get them. And it was, we didn't get a Saturday night date for a long time because we were taking kids, back and forth. It wasn't even time enough for a movie. I got to talk to the teenagers about that. They should make those events longer so we at least go to a movie while we're waiting. So it was a sacrifice. Okay, I know I'm whining a little bit. But, it's we have to make that decision. To make the drive, to make sure that our kids are connected, and sometimes they may not want to go.
Yep.
And then the question is, well, what do you do when they don't want to go? And I think that's where there are times to allow for some autonomy and decision making, and there are times when we step in as parents and we kind of make executive decisions for our kids. And I think that getting them in a position regularly where they are exposed to the Word of God and exposed to godly people is imperative, even if they act like they don't want to, because they're being exposed and they're hearing it and they're processing. I've seen so many kids that have come through our teen ministries over the years that just walked around with the sourest face. I won't call anybody out right now.
Sat in the chairs like this.
Yep. And then, one fine day you have a conversation, you realize they heard everything you said and then some, and they're thinking. But if as parents we just capitulate and say, okay, fine, they're testing you. They're testing the boundaries. They're testing everything. But the one thing we can't give up on is getting them in a place where they can be influenced by the Word of God and by godly people.
And I do want to say that we drive them everywhere for band. We drive them for things for school. We drive them for all their extracurricular stuff, why is it any different in driving them to stuff? I mean, honestly, it should be more important that we get them to kingdom things, because it's much more important for them to spend time with people. And I know, I hear sometimes, well, my kid doesn't have any friends in that group. Well, it takes time to build friendships. And so obviously the more we can get exposed, they can be exposed to those people, to really spending time with them, the better off they're going to be, and the more they're going to be able to build those relationships. But it does take time. But again, they need those relationships with other people. That was so important for our girls. I know Stassi would share this herself. Her senior year was really hard because her best friends, who were disciples, moved away. They were older. Abria went on to college. Deanna went on to college. And it was really hard for her. And she, made some decisions in her senior year that she can share about herself that, were not great. And a lot of it was because the influence that was around her. She's obviously fine, great disciple. But she would tell you herself, those relationships, those spiritual relationships are so, 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 so important. And and again, as parents, especially if we're the ones driving, it's on us to get them there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just kind of a final word about belonging, especially in a time of a pandemic. That sort of puts an added sort of twist on it, right? And I think that as we think about the circumstances with COVID, and obviously we want to, we're all trying to be safe as we possibly can be. I do think that we do have to weigh the spiritual benefits of being together against the concerns that we certainly have for health and physical health. And we can't make that decision for every family, but I do want to say that belonging this is an incredibly formative time of your teenager's life. And this seemed like in the beginning, well, it's going to be a couple of months and we'll just all hunker down and wait it out. But this is dragging on for months. It could go on until into next year. And if this 1 year of your teenager's life is a big deal, that's a huge percentage of their their life so far. Right. And if we aren't committed to helping them belong, we're going to do our kids a disservice. And so we're striving as a leadership to do everything we can to make things as safe as possible for before our kids as they gather. But I would encourage you as parents to really give thought to that and not allow that to be a stumbling block. Let's work together around it, but we cannot let this slip. And we cannot let this go away. Right. Our kids need each other. They need connection because it's one of their core needs, and they'll find it somewhere.
They will.
And so we definitely need to stay committed to that. Anyway, I hope these things have helped you. Just a few thoughts. I mean, obviously, parenting teens is a large conversation, a large topic, but just a few things we've learned along the way that hopefully will help you. Let's continue to pray for our children. Yep. Let's help them find belonging, identity, autonomy. And to God be the glory. Amen. See you guys soon.